So what might be the answer? Well, we believe the answer is a business intelligence architecture. And a basic business intelligence architecture, as this graphic will show, takes all of those different data sources in a healthcare organization, again, the EMR, the practice management system, finance, HR, etc., and it loads all of that data into a central database called the Enterprise Data Warehouse. And what's done in the Enterprise Data Warehouse is that central database where all that data is being loaded into is used to integrate the data together, so do that matching that needs to take place for the patients in the multiple systems or employees or other data elements, but then also prepare the data for reporting. Oftentimes in application databases, the data is not really ready to satisfy the reporting needs of the users. It maybe calculations haven't been performed that need to be performed, or maybe the data is just not structured in a way that reports can easily be ran, and the code that has to be written to produce the reports is so complicated that it really won't perform. Well, in the data warehouse environment, the data can be cleaned up, the data can be restructured to be ready for reporting. So moving on from the data warehouse, we move into what is called a metadata layer. And metadata simply means the data about the data. So really what that means is information can be put into the business intelligence tool that makes the user experience much easier. So let's kind of walk through some of those typical steps that are done in a metadata layer. One is role-based permissions. It's very important, especially in a healthcare environment where patient privacy is so important, that users only have access to the data that they should have access to based on their role. So within the metadata layer, as that data comes out of the data warehouse and goes through it on its way to the user, a role-based permission architecture is applied so that the business intelligence tool looks to see who the user is, what role they play within the organization, and therefore what data they should be able to see. Then the next step is the data connections and the mapping and the relationships. So if a user had to use a database natively without a metadata layer, they would be forced to know what table the data they want resides in. They would be forced to know what field within that table the data they need is in, and then they would be forced, if the data they needed was in multiple tables, they would have to know how to relate those tables together. And really what it comes down to, they have to know SQL or structured query language, which most users do not have training for. So in a metadata layer, those connections can be done beforehand, and Oracle databases can be mapped to, and SQL Server databases can be mapped to, and all the different platforms that exist in an organization can be connected to without a user having to know what each or where each data element lives within the systems of their organizations. They just have to come into the metadata layer and find the data they need. A third very important step that can be applied is the use of standard terminology and logical organization. So again, a table structure of a database may not be logical or easy for a typical user to consume. So instead of using terminology that's in maybe a technical system database, that terminology can be changed to using words that users are used to using, and they can call the data elements what makes sense to them. And then from an organization standpoint, even if data lives in different databases or different tables, from an organization standpoint, that data can be organized together, maybe into a common folder where it'll be easy for a user to find. Okay, so as the data moves out of the data warehouse through the metadata layer, the final major section of a BI architecture is the presentation layer. So now that that data has been migrated out of the data sources into the data warehouse, it's came through the metadata layer so that we ensure users are only seeing the data that they should see based on their role, and we've made it easier for them to connect to the data. Now the presentation layer provides that view of the data the users want. And That can be in terms of a dashboard, which a dashboard is simply a single screen presentation typically of the major data points that are useful for a user based on their role, so that at a glance they can really see how their organization is performing, and they can see those charts and those data points that really make it easy for them to understand how they're doing. But also not just dashboards, also analysis tools. Analysis tools make it to where users can interact with the data and ask questions of the data, drag and drop various data elements onto a screen, and trend data over time. And whenever they see a user sees something that looks like, oh, there might be an issue, or I wonder why that number is so low, they can drill down and analyze further and hopefully uncover opportunities for their organization to improve. And then finally, the third piece of the presentation layer is managed reporting. So there are still times where a specific format for a report is needed, and in that case, reports can be developed within the BI tools to deliver that specific format.